he was teeing off. Actually, I was just trying to muster some interest in golf. But I guess it's hard to tee off when you're teed off. Another time, on Air Force One, when he came back to talk to a bunch of reporters, he ordered me to stop staring at him. I lowered my eyes. But over the years, 41 tried to adapt. He has often kidded me about our love-hate relationship, dubbing me his favorite-unfavorite Bigfoot columnist, and chastising me about being a limo-lib who cast him unfairly as an elitist. He loved it when I wrote columns tweaking the Clintons, and hated it when I wrote columns tweaking the Bushes, the two rival political dynasties of meritocracy and aristocracy, both driven by feelings of entitlement, that I seemed destined to cover in endless succession. Poppy Bush sometimes threatens to seek psychiatric counseling to cure himself of this love-hate syndrome, knowing that will make me laugh. Both Bush père and fils are notoriously allergic to introspection and analysis, considering even questions about TV and movie tastes a dread attempt to put them on the couch and plumb the unconscious depths. After moderating the panel on the media and the White House at his library, the former president took me, along with a bunch of his former officials, to a red meat feast at a local barbecue joint. He was charming and glowing with pride at being only the second man in history to have his son follow him into the Oval Office. But in hushed voices, out in the parking lot, some of his former aides, men who had worked for the pragmatic realpolitik team of the Velvet Hammer James Baker and H.W., as 41 sometimes differentiates himself from his presidential namesake, confided that they were already anxious and mystified about the chest-thumping, ideological foreign policy tone of Bush II. In its first 2 months, the new administration had gotten into tussles with Russia and China, blowing off treaties and making the rest of the world jittery. After running against the hormonal irresponsibility of the Clinton era, could W be indulging in an even more destructive teenage rebellion against his family? Prodded by the forward-leaning my way or the highway twins, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, Bush the younger was doing an Oedipal loop-de-loop, intemperately shredding the internationalism and traditional alliances so cherished by his father and grandfather, a Wall Street banker and Connecticut senator. My two older brothers were Senate pages in the early 50s for JFK, LBJ, Richard Nixon, and Prescott Bush, whom they described as a central casting senator, tall and craggy, favoring gray worsted suits even in warm weather. W was replacing the old family motto of noblesse oblige with a new one, oblige this. It seemed odd that Mr. Popularity at Yale, the gregarious frat president who gave everyone cute nicknames and led pranks like scalding DKE pledges with hot wire hangers, was suddenly scalding the world and not leaving them laughing. At the barbecue dinner, a top official of Bush I fretted that the Bush II foreign policy team, the seasoned hands who were supposed to be the adults taking over from those Clinton adolescents who seemed to make it up as they went along, was too belligerent, too conservative, too blunt, too negative, and too improvisational in dealing with the globe on everything from missile defense to Kyoto. W mocked enviros as green lima beans. "These guys are linear," the official said. "They have to have black and white. They have to have bogeymen." Bush 43 exhibited a weird combination of arrogance and tentativeness. "You're never quite sure," another Bush I official observed, "if those papers in front of W blew away in the wind, if he would know what to say." The old man, as his admiring former officials called him, reflected only paternal pride in his W's fledgling presidency, even though his son was consciously patterning himself not on his own father, but on Ronald Reagan. The great communicator so overshadowed his vice president that the syntax-mangling Poppy seemed to droop a bit in the Gipper's presence, managing to look shorter, even though he was taller. One of 41's speechwriters called it his deferential Episcopalian tilt. Bush 43 certainly wasn't following in the diplomatic footsteps of his father, who practiced an intensely personal, folksy, feet-up style of diplomacy. I spent half of 41's presidency watching him aggressively charming world leaders, sometimes too aggressively. He loved demonically driving visiting heads of state on his cigarette boat around the Kennebunkport bays, except François Mitterrand, who begged off, saying he got mal de mer. Continuing a social diplomacy tradition he'd practiced as ambassador to the UN and liaison to Beijing, he dragged Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir of Israel to the Air and Space Museum to see the movie To Fly, King Hussein down the river from Mount Vernon on a boat, and Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak to his first baseball game to see the Orioles play the Red Sox, complete with hot dogs and horseradish. When the announcer gave the names of the celebrities in attendance at Memorial Stadium, the name Ted Williams got a roar from the crowd, while the name Mubarak provoked only silent wonderment. Who did he play for? The Indians? Bush 41 loved Saudi Prince Bandar so much, pheasant hunting at his British estate and allowing Bandar alone to smoke cigars at Kennebunkport, that the Saudi ambassador became known as Bandar Bush. 41's still at it. He invited Mikhail Gorbachev to come to College Station for his 80th birthday parachute jump and tried to persuade the former head of the evil empire to jump with him. Afraid, Gorbachev demurred. W. attended his dad's birthday party but did not stay to watch him fall 5,000 feet, returning to the White House for a T-ball game. For Poppy, who belonged to 3 men's clubs in Washington and the all-male Bohemian Grove in California, the global stage was the ultimate exclusive men's club, Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady who ordered Bush Sr. not to go wobbly on Saddam, included. Before 41's 1990 summit with Gorbachev, Richard Pearl, the Cold War arms expert who would one day be a leading Bush hawk on Iraq, pooh-poohed such personal diplomacy. It's very easy to get caught up in personal relationships and fail thereby to analyze the situation accurately, Pearl sniffed. H.W. and his pal Baker had an ad hoc, practical, and sometimes disturbingly unsentimental we-know-best foreign policy, with none of the moral umbrage of Jimmy Carter or soaring dreams of Ronald Reagan. As Tom Friedman and I wrote in a Times Magazine piece in 1990, they regard themselves as good people who will do the correct thing, and if circumstances permit, the right thing. The approach is, split the difference, keep things stable, democracy where possible, free markets where possible, apple pie where possible. If what seems reasonable at the moment is to side with the Chinese power elite rather than the students in Tiananmen Square, then you side with those in power. If what seems reasonable is to split the difference between the aspirations of Lithuanians and the interests of Gorbachev, then you split the difference. Bush and Baker fail to convey passion on issues, and that can be a real liability. Long before his son strutted as Top Gun, Time magazine had hailed the elder Bush and Baker as Top Guns on top of the world on their February 13, 1989 cover. It became clear during W's 2000 campaign that the one-term Texas governor, who got sober and serious late in life, had not studied up on foreign policy at his father's knee. In his time around the White House, when he was still known as Junior, he had hung out with Lee Atwater, the Machiavellian wunderkind of the revived Republican Party, in the political chop shop. Junior was the loyalty enforcer, making sure that Bush staffers were vetted as true blue. He was a good-time guy with a quick temper, not considered by the Bush family and staff as presidential material, or even gubernatorial material. I came a cropper of him once back in those days when I was on summer duty at Kennebunkport as the Times White House reporter. Wanting some playful payback against his dad for making reporters awake at dawn to watch him tee off for one of his breathless games of aerobic golf, or golf polo, as we called it, I rummaged around in my suitcase and came up with a Bob Dole for President in '88 t-shirt and a Jesse Jackson for President in '88 hat. I knew 41 would get the joke, but when father and son swung by me in their golf cart, Poppy wasn't looking, and Junior gave me a scary glare. Later, he sent back word that he was not amused. I comforted myself with the knowledge that Junior, a Midland businessman, would never be in a position to wreak revenge on me.